Just as Chucky catches up to Tommy, Phil, and Lil, they all stop at a deep hole in the ground that Stu had apparently dug earlier, presumably for a large tree he intends to plant. The babies stand on the hole's edge and stare down into it in awe, and Chucky openly wonders, "What is it?" Tommy kicks a rock down the hole and lands in a shallow pool of mud on the bottom, and Tommy openly figures, "Maybe a moose lives here." He then asks, "Who goes in first?" Phil and Lil both instantly decline, and Spike just then comes up behind them with the hot dog squeak toy from earlier still in his mouth, though none of the babies notice Spike. Chucky states to everyone that he hopes it isn't a footprint, and just then Spike puts the squeak toy down and barks at the babies. Spike's bark startles the babies, and they all fall into the hole at once as a result, though the pool of mud at the bottom gives them a soft landing. As they all pick themselves up, Will chuckles and comments, "Yuck." Chucky then shakes the mud off his arm, and in doing so accidentally flings all over Tommy, Phil, and Lil. After a pause, the three then decides to retaliate by scooping up some mud and throwing it in Chucky's face. Chucky is hit in the face, and Lil says, "Gotcha!" An annoyed Chucky then wipes his face, scoops up some more mud, and throws it back at Tommy, Phil, and Lil. It then escalates into the babies having a friendly mud ball fight for a brief moment, but as Lil gears up to throwing another ball of mud, she feels something moving around the mud she's holding and gets distracted. After getting hit with more mud and wiping it off her face, Lil then takes a closer look at the mud, and an earthworm emerges. Lil openly asks, "What's this?" Lil holds her ball of mud up so that everyone can get a close look at the earthworm. Apparently, however, none of the babies have ever seen an earthworm before, with no adults around to explain. Phil makes it out to be chocolate spaghetti. Chucky points out that it's dancing. I got the word scurrying around. Tommy then picks the earthworm up with his fingers to get a much closer look at it, and not knowing any better, he ingests to see what it tastes like. As Tommy chews and swallows the poor earthworm, Phil and Lil eagerly ask Tommy, "What's it like?" Tommy replies that while it doesn't taste like chocolate spaghetti, it dances all the way down. Listen to the babies and eagerly try to find more earthworms to eat, and we focus on Chucky, who finds another earthworm in the mud and ingests it, but promptly retches and spits it out because of the taste, leaving the poor chewed up earthworm to struggle back home. Tommy then interrupts everyone's thing that while chocolate spaghetti is okay, their main task at hand is finding a moose. And he also mentions, "Maybe if we're real quiet, we can sneak up on one." They all proceed to climb out of the hole. Tommy, Phil, and Lil manage to climb out quickly, but Chucky finds that he's unable to pull himself out and is left behind. The babies, and Chucky, then start to wander around the yard, looking for a moose. Phil points out a silhouette that indeed looks like a moose sitting down, but upon a closer look, it's revealed to be a potted plant on top of a small gray box that itself is on top of a much larger box of fertilizer for the yard. Lil then points out another silhouette being great resemblance to a moose, but this, upon closer look, is also revealed to be not a moose, but all rather a blue shirt, hanging on an upside-down rake that's leaning up against a box of high grow. As they continue to wander around, the three babies come up to a pile of fertilizer. The bags are arranged in such a way that the babies are able to crawl under two of the bags that are leaning up diagonally against the rest, and an open bag of fertilizer is also perched on top of the edifice of bags. As the babies crawl under the bags, Spike, with the hot dog squeak toy in his mouth, dashes over and leaps on top of the bags, before leaping away and accidentally knocking over the open bag of fertilizer, which spills its contents onto Tommy as he emerges from under the bags, leaving him as well as his two friends filthy. Spike shakes the toy around in his mouth and sends it flying into a pile of cut-down branches near a tree. Spike chases the toy into the branches, digs around for it, and emerges with two modest-sized branches stuck on his head, which bear resembles to a pair of antlers. The three babies then peek through some bushes and tall grass and see a silhouette of Spike with the branches on his head, which altogether grant him great resemblance to a moose, and the babies thus figure that they have finally found a moose. Tommy asks Phil and Lil how they intend to catch it. Phil suggests digging a big hole for the moose to fall into and get stuck in, but Phil suggests using a net. Phil and Lil have one of their trademark arguments for a brief moment on whether to use a net or a hole, but are suddenly interrupted as Spike begins to walk over. The babies fail to notice that the silhouette is really Tommy's own dog and think that The moose has spotted them and intend to get them. A frightened Tommy thus shouts, "Run away!" and the babies all run for their lives, leaving a confused but intrigued Spike behind. As the three babies run back the way they came, they come across the big hole that they were down in earlier, that Chucky is still stuck in. Chucky, hearing his friends approaching, holds both his hands up whilst jumping and shouts for help. Tommy, Phil, and Lil stop by the hole and find that Chucky is indeed stuck. Chucky orders Tommy to get him out. Tommy tells his friend that they have to hurry, as they believe a moose is coming after them. Chucky, however, has become too impatient to want to hear anything more about moose and skeptically replies, "Tommy, there is no moose in your backyard. Now will you please get me out of here?" Without another word, Tommy, Phil, and Lil slide back down into the hole to help Chucky out. They give Chucky a boost up, and Chucky is able to stick his right hand above the edge of the hole and feel around for something to grab onto. Chucky, unable to see what he's grabs onto the tiny hand wheel of Evolve on a long green water tube that's part of the Pickles sprinkler system. Tommy, Phil, and Lil give Chucky a big push-up, and while they successfully get Chucky out, it also causes an unprepared Chucky to roll over and accidentally pull the Evolve, head wheel and all, clean out of the water tube, leaving behind a rupture in the sprinkler system, which is apparently designed to operate at a water pressure much higher than that of mains water pressure, with the extra pressure achieved via an electric water pump and releasing the huge geyser of water several feet straight up high above the house. The water also washes the disembodied Evolve up to the sky with it. As a lightly dizzy Chucky picks himself up and his friends climb out of the hole and join up with him, the water begins to rain all over the yard, including all over the babies. This also washes the fertilizer from early off of Tommy, Phil, and Lil. The ruptured sprinkler system is siphoning a huge amount of water from the town's water entire system, severely reducing everyone else's water pressure. Tommy's maternal grandparents, Minka and Boris, they're filling the bird bath with the garden hose when the water suddenly stops because of the reduced pressure. A confused Boris peeks into the house and says to himself, "What's with this water?" Another couple, who are both wearing swimsuits, listen to music together through headphones and relax on long chairs next to a spinning water fountain. The fountain's water is also stopping because of the reduced water pressure. The couple doesn't notice. They're looking away from the water fountain and they can't hear the water stopping as they have their headphones on. Back at the Pickles residence, the geyser of water is indeed still spewing from the rupture in the sprinkler system. The airborne valve is falling back down to earth. Tommy feels that it's plummeting straight toward his sleeping grandfather Lou, but the valve instead falls onto the roof, falls down the rain gutter, bounces off the back of the reclining lawn chair that Lou is sleeping on, bounces off the door handle of the sliding door between the backyard and the living room, and finally lands on top of the programmer timer box that turns the now ruptured sprinkler system on and off. After spinning around for a brief moment, the valve falls down the sides of the programmer timer and lodges onto one of the trippers on the timer's dial and pulls it forward to the point where it clicks the system off. Thus, the Pickles ruptured sprinkler system shuts down, the huge geyser of water stops spewing, and the town's water system is able to build pressure back up and stabilize itself, though not without causing more chaos all over town. Back to Boris and Minka. Boris is still examining the garden hose by looking down into it, when the water pressure is suddenly restored and the hose sprays an unsuspecting Boris in the face. As Boris struggles with the hose and is sprayed in the face, hollers to his wife to turn the hose off. Back to the other couple who are reclining next to the spinning fountain, who still haven't noticed what happened to their fountain's water. The water pressure is suddenly restored, but the sudden rise in pressure damages the fountain and causes it to squirt a large torrent of water across the yard, all over the couple, who are both equally surprised and soaked, and likely thankful that they were wearing swimsuits. Back to the babies. A soaked Chucky shakes himself dry. Tommy asks him if he's okay. A frustrated and quite irritated Chucky replies, "Am I okay? Am I okay? First, you talk me into breaking out of the playpen. Then you leave me in a hole. Then you get me all wet. And for what? Huh? A moose?" As Chucky continues to share his pain, Spike, who still has the branches stuck on his head, comes in behind Chucky, but the other babies still see him as a silhouette and thus think he's a moose. "I don't see any moose. Where's the moose? Tommy, where? Where?" Tommy interrupts Chucky and points him in the direction of Spike's silhouette, and Chucky turns around and sees Spike. He also doesn't see that it's really Spike and also believes it's a moose. A flabbergasted Chucky says, "Wow!" in awe at what he sees. After a brief moment, however, Spike comes into a much clearer view and he also manages to shake off the branches that were stuck on his head. The babies finally see their moose was really Spike. Tommy feeling a little Spike? And Chucky, his ego inflated, did as he finds he's right all along, as in, huh? Some moose? Just then, the babies hear Stu coming into the backyard whilst carrying heavy bags of fish fertilizer. Our Stu's like, "Open the door, Dee Dee. The fish fertilizer weighs a ton." They all rush back to the playpen to avoid being seen and getting into trouble. Just in the nick of time, the four babies make it back to the playpen, which is still on its side. They jump into the floor so that it tips right side up again with all of them back inside. The noise at last wakes up Lou, who is without a clue that anything happened while he was asleep. Dee Dee opens the door and she and her husband walk out to the yard. Stu asks his father if everything is under control. Lou, who wasn't awake, see what the babies have been up to, replies, "All quiet on the western front." Dee Dee then looks at their yard and notices everything is soaking wet from Chucky accidentally rupturing the sprinkler system. But of course, none of them know about what Chucky did and can't see the small rupture he made in the systems tube from where they're all standing, and all Dee Dee can think is to ask Lou is, "Say, it didn't rain or anything while you were out here, did it?" The three adults briefly look up at the sky to check for rain clouds. They don't see any, and Lou replies to Dee Dee, "No, not today, no." Stu then decides to take a nap and starts walking back into the house, and Lou then asks his daughter-in-law, "Say, Dee Dee, did I ever tell you about the time me and my pappy bagged a great northern bull moose?" Stu stops when he overhears his father recounting his story to his wife. Before Dee Dee can answer, Lou cuts her off and goes on, "How big was he, you say? Well, I just happen to have a picture of him right here." And he gets a black and white photo of the moose that he showed to his grandson and his friends earlier to Dee Dee. Just before Lou hands the photo to Dee Dee, Stu walks over, cuts in, and takes the photo from his father for a closer look. Stu skeptically says, "Let me see that." Upon turning the photo over, Stu discovers that the photograph is actually a pocket-sized insurance calendar. Feeling that Lou's family never had an encounter with the moose in the calendar's picture in the first place, and thus invalidating as proof of his story, Stu hands the insurance calendar back to his father, saying to him, "This is an insurance calendar, Pop." As Lou takes a closer look at the back of his calendar, Lou replies, "Well, maybe it isn't his actual photo, but it was just as big." A skeptical Stu and Dee Dee then begin to walk back inside the house, and Stu rebut, "Sure, Pop." Lou heads in, "Bigger, in fact." And still skeptical Stu replies, "Sure, Pop, bigger." Seeing that his son and daughter-in-law are skeptical as to whether his childhood story is really true, Lou mumbles to himself in late irritation. Back on the babies, Chucky tells Tommy, "I told you there's no moose out there, Tommy." Tommy openly wonders why his dog, all dressed up like one, as he's too young to understand that Spike didn't intentionally stick the branches on his head, and Phil will add in, "Yeah." Tommy then openly figures that perhaps his dog was trying to tell themselves something. Phil replies, "Like what?" And Lil adds in, "Yeah, like what?" Tommy figures, maybe, that we'll have to go a little bit further to get to Moose Country. Phil and Lil openly agree, but Chucky clearly not up for another moose-related adventure, especially involves going a little bit further than they had already gone, puts his left hand on his head in grief and shouts, "Oh no!"